Essence, a Hollow Knight Thesis, by Nim P. Pseudo. The precious fragments of light that dreams are made of. This is the uselessly vague definition provided by Seer when she is first encountered. For the remainder of the game, essence, much like most other things, goes largely unexplained, and we, as the players, are left to infer its properties. In this video, I want to discuss essence at length. This will neither be a faultless, nor perhaps even coherent analysis, but I'd like to propose some of my ideas and speculations on the topic. They will, of course, cartwheel into absurdity, but that's just half the fun. As a disclaimer, this video does assume that you have already beaten Hollow Knight and are well versed in its lore. There will be spoilers, and some of the terms and ideas thrown around may be difficult to follow if you're new. If this comes across as overwhelming, then I'd recommend a YouTuber by the name of mossbag. He gives a very succinct explanation of the game's lore in his videos. I'll put a link in the description. But anyway, here goes. Seer, that decrepit old moth fond of making strange noises, is the foremost authority on essence within Hollow Knight. She mentions it more than any other character, and in her comments we are given multiple hints at what essence is. At different points she associates it with dreams, memories, hope, and potential. Although these are all interesting avenues to explore, I'll be focusing on the connection between essence and memories. In fact, if you'll allow it, I'd like to extrapolate that a bit further and make my first wild assertion. Essence is consciousness. It isn't just dreams or memories. It's the very substance that allows bugs to think. Let me defend this position. The dream nail is the instrument that allows the knight to collect essence. The more it contains, the more powerful the dream nail becomes. Once the knight acquires the dream nail, they begin to encounter ghosts scattered throughout Hallownest. These ghosts are composed of essence, as can be seen from the essence particles floating around them. When struck with the dream nail, they are absorbed. That's all fairly straightforward, but if we stop for a moment to consider what an essence ghost really is, then the simple idea that essence is dreams begins to feel insufficient. These ghosts interact with the knight. They display the personality traits and mannerisms of their former selves. Some even comment on the environment around them, showing a degree of awareness. This is because an essence ghost is the untethered consciousness of a dead bug, their mind set free of their mortal shell. Another connection between essence and consciousness can be observed in dream nail dialogue. When the knight strikes a living thing with the dream nail, they receive a message from the target's mind. In that act, the dream nail is absorbing a bit of the target's essence, their consciousness, in the form of a single coherent thought, not just some random dream. There are further examples that both support and undermine my postulate, but for the sake of time I'll move along. Assuming we're all willing to take the leap to view essence as consciousness, it harmonizes several seemingly disparate elements of the game, namely what the Radiance is, her history, and how she functions. For those of you familiar with some of the tropes in fantasy world building, many employ a system that divides reality into multiple planes of existence, i.e. the Great Wheel cosmology in D&D, for those of you that are familiar. Hollow Knight does something very similar. In the game, there are two planes: the material plane, in which the bugs live and most of the exploration takes place, and the dream plane, where the knight encounters the Radiance, the Dreamers, and other beings. However, if we're employing our belief that essence equals consciousness, we'd be more accurate to call this dream plane the mind plane. Each of these planes is composed of a metaphysical element, the mind plane being composed of essence, and the material plane being composed of soul. Although most beings reside on the material plane, the Radiance resides on the mind plane. It's at this point that I'll make my second wild assertion. The Radiance is a conceptual entity. She is a massive aggregation of essence that exists as a unified consciousness. I'll attempt to defend this as well. It's fairly apparent that the Radiance is a god, though that terminology is a little murky within the context of the game. She occupies the same echelon of power as the other major deities, the Pale King, the White Lady, and Un. However, unlike the other deities, she does not exist on the material plane because she has no physical body. She is exclusively essence. We can observe this fact most clearly in the fourth ending of the game, Embrace the Void, in which upon her defeat, she is torn apart by the Shade Lord and explodes into her base component. So, if the Radiance is an amalgam of essence, then how does that inform us about her behavior? Let's start with the concrete information that we have. We know from Seer that the Radiance is an ancient being that predates Hallownest and was responsible for the creation of the Moth tribe. Over time, she was forgotten, and then returned to seek vengeance in the form of the infection. Without going too far into the morality of it, the Radiance's actions seem rather harsh. Being forgotten isn't much of a reason to turn every living creature into a shambling puppet. You could attribute her actions to the usual cruelty of godhood, but it's here I'll submit my third wild assertion. The Radiance did not unleash her dream plague out of spite. She did it because she was starving. Let me explain. Another common trope in fantasy world building is the idea that divine power is a direct result of worship. The more a god is praised by its followers, the more powerful the god becomes. The less praise, the weaker. Hollow Knight explores this idea with the Radiance, but adds its own unique twist. Simply put, the Radiance relies on essence for nourishment. By siphoning it from living things, she maintains her power. It was to this end that the Radiance created the Moth tribe. They served as a renewable food source that regularly offered essence in the form of remembrance. By thinking about the Radiance, the Moth tribe produced the very essence that fed her, perpetuating from generation to generation. This helps to explain the Moth tribe's cultural fixation on the importance of remembrance. While we are on the subject of creation myths, I think it's appropriate that we segue briefly into the transposable nature of essence and soul. To do that, we'll need a couple examples. While traveling through Greenpath, the knight encounters several lore tablets that speak of Un. The tablets state that Un dreamed the world of Greenpath into existence. Assuming this information to be true, then Un used essence, in other words, dreams, to create living things. This means that it is possible to convert essence from the mind plane into soul on the material plane. The Radiance presumably used this same method to create the Moth tribe. Another example of essence becoming soul, or to put it a different way, thought becoming material, is charms. That quivering blob SALUBRA mentions that charms are the crystallization of a dying bug's wish. If we apply our theory to this, then we can surmise that charms come about because the consciousness, the essence of a dying bug, is transposed into a material object, one of soul. The inverse of this process is also true, soul becoming essence. The prime example of this is the White Palace. According to Relic Seeker Lem, one day the palace simply vanished without a trace. However, with a sufficiently powerful dream nail, we learn that the palace was in fact transferred to the mind plane by the Pale King, in that process becoming essence. As I see it, and take this as you will, there is a constant give and take between the two metaphysical elements. As the building blocks of reality, essence and soul, oscillate along a point of equilibrium. Essence from the mind plane is injected into the material plane, becoming soul. As living things grow and strive toward consciousness, they convert their soul into more essence, which then bleeds naturally back into the mind plane. Conceptual gods, such as the Radiants, rely on this imbalance of soul and essence to survive, and perpetuate it, thus perpetuating life. Following the Pale King's reincarnation and the founding of Hallownest, he became aware of the Moth tribe's importance to the Radiants and recognized that if her steady supply of essence were to be stolen, then she would weaken. In an odd change of pace, the Pale King's plan to do this actually succeeded, and the Radiance was effectively starved into obscurity. It was at this point, on the precipice of oblivion, that the Radiance relied on a different tactic to sustain herself. She began forcibly siphoning essence from bugs, instead of passively receiving it. When a bug is infected, their Dreamnail dialogue becomes fragmented and crude, altered by the Radiance's vengeful will. This can be best observed with MYLA the Miner, who gradually degenerates into a husk over the course of the game. This occurs because of the loss of essence, which stunts her intelligence. Because the Radiance herself is an amalgamation of essence, she can manipulate the bodies of her victims using the very essence that she absorbs. So, in summation, my slapdash theory attributes a great deal more significance to essence than is explained by Seer. It isn't merely dream-light fragments. It is one of the very fundaments of reality. A small cluster yields consciousness, and a great horde yields divinity. Without it, there would be no initiative, no meaning in existence, no purpose to grant shape to soul. In other words, what I'm saying is that Seer is a senile old lady, and you shouldn't trust her. So there you have it. Essence unraveled. I said we'd cartwheel into absurdity, didn't I? Hopefully it was an amusing sort. Tell me if you found this content interesting, or if you'd rather I not diverge from my usual uploads. Feel free to voice your own Hollow Knight theories in the comments as well. I'm interested to see them. Take it easy, everyone.